Okay, so Ghostdriver plays Championless Burn, Sea Monsters, which is a deck that I didn't think was going to see as much play as it did this weekend, but it is what it is. And then Karma Lux, which is a deck that I like a lot. I think it's really interesting to see this adaptation come out of people not wanting to run Bannerman, which I think is perfectly reasonable. And then Mihomme, of course, has Scouts, Indoor, and Burn as well. That's Presto's last deck. So, no Bilgewater, no Ionia. Okay. So when you've got MF Scouts and like Mihomme's running is about as close to a full aggro lineup as you can, especially given how aggressive his Mistwraith deck is. Which means that I've been told that Karma Lux has a good aggro matchup. I'm not super sold on that. I don't have the experience to speak on it myself. It's just what I've been told. And it does play 3 health potions, so that is a possibility. And because it is Will of Ionia, like I think it, has a pretty decent chance of actually beating out your Indoor deck, as well as like if I can get an Unyielding Spirit down onto a Lux, that's 6 damage that I'm blocking out from the Indoor every time it attacks, which is a lot. Or God forbid I get it onto a Radiant Guardian, right? Like, it's actually kind of hard for Indoor to punch through this deck. Like, it'll take a while, and if my Lux is undying, there's no answer that you have to that. I have Will of Ionia if you have to try and proactively Atrocity. Like, I think this has a pretty good chance of, like, beating out every deck you have. But at the same time, Sea Monsters has been known to have a good enough early game between Thorny Toad and Dreadbloom Wanderer to just beat out aggro decks. And then, of course, we have the full Life Gain suite of removal spells from Shadow Isle. So I think I'd be fine with either a Karma Lux or a Sea Monster ban out of Mihomme Michel. Personally, I would ban Lux Karma. Just because it does seem a little bit scarier. I think that my Indoor Spiders has a bit of a harder time getting through this. I think Burn has an impossible time getting through this because of the triple health potion, as well as the triple Eye of the Dragon. Like, I think it's pretty reasonable that this deck just hoses my Burn deck. And then Scouts, I'm not, like, super sold that I can beat a Lux deck with a board-centric deck, so I definitely think this is what Mahomme's going to ban. And then on the side of Ghostdriver, I think that we're going to end up banning the Indoor Spiders. These two decks seem a little bit weaker in terms of, everything that I want to be going for. I believe that, like, if I'm reading my Karma getting banned, and then I'm left with Burn and Sea Monsters, I personally, I don't like Burn in a tournament lineup. It feels a little weird to me. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's just a playstyle that I go for, but I don't think it's, like, phenomenal. We saw it, like, stumble sometimes. We see it, like, it's just very feast or famine, right? And that just kind of is what it is. Like, you're not going to win a tournament by playing the safest lineup. You do have to take some risks. But I think Indoor gets... Burn is supposed to... Like, I don't know if Burn is supposed to beat Indoor Spiders. I'm pretty sure it is, but I've heard otherwise. But yeah, I think we ban Indoor Spiders. So I would lock in, ban Good Karma... jeez. Karma Lux, I'm just reading deck titles now. And ban Indoor Spiders. So we're going to get into the game to see what the players actually did. Alright, so it wasn't the Indoor Spiders banned. It's possible that, it's definitely not out of the question that Ghosterdriver just doesn't want to play a Burn Mirror. And banned out the Burn. I think banning out the Scouts is also, like, I think any of the bans into Mihomme's lineup isn't, like, terrible. I would have liked to see the Indoor Spider ban, but that's just me. Between you and me, Mihomme does win this round, so maybe the Indoor Spiders... That's the one thing I'm like still trying to figure out is, like, if I call a ban incorrectly, like, and then the player whose ban I called incorrectly loses, like, is that a point for or against me? So, personally, when my opponent has a Crimson Disciple, I like attacking with Elise, because I don't have a good block onto this anyway, so it's going to deal 2 damage to me if I block it. So I like attacking here and then blocking it with the Elise on the following turn. But that's a situation that I've seen come up a lot, where, like, someone has a Crimson Disciple and someone has an Elise. I believe it is correct to attack with Elise. Like, obviously, if Transfusion comes out or, like, a Mystic Shot comes down onto my Elise, then, like, that is what it is. But if a Mystic Shot comes down onto Elise, especially with this hand, then I can respond with Avarosan Sentry, and, like, I still have a 2-attack blocker, and that's all that really matters. But, like, now you're going to take 2 damage from this thing regardless. Boom Crew's like so awkward for you to deal with. Like, yeah, you just throw this down. But this is what I meant, right? Like, we're just gonna block this. Maybe like even if you just let this. So if you let this hit you, you take 2 damage from it. But because you, oh excuse me, because you don't have a clean way to deal with it, you're going to take at least 2 more damage from it. Like, you just have to minimize the amount of damage that Crimson Disciple ever gets to do to you, and there's almost no way to stop it from dealing at least 2 to you. So like now he gets to attack with it. We block it with Elise. We take 2 damage from it regardless. We Withering Wail next turn. Or I guess on turn 5, because we didn't float any spell mana. We don't have a great way to deal with this Boom Crew rookie. Actually, we should swap these, right? Like, there's no reason to push... Yeah, no, you definitely swap these around. This is dying to anything that you block, so there's no reason to take an extra damage onto your Elise. And it doesn't make a difference in most scenarios, but it does here because your opponent doesn't have a 1 attack unit. Yeah, I like the green, the blue. What is this guy's name? Bright Collector. Neverglade Collector's Big Prankster. This is Dreadbloom Wanderer's the 3/2. God, I know this guy's name. The Sapling Maker. I don't know why I'm blanking on it so hard. But yeah, Sapling Maker makes a lot of sense here. We get to push a lot of damage. You might as well throw in 1 more attacker. And like, there's a decent chance that Ghosterdriver comes back from this. You've got your opponent at the 10 life total, which is kind of the ideal target point of, you know, it's pretty reasonable that I can burn you out from 10. So like, as long as I can get there with just my units, we're feeling pretty good. I think it would be reasonable to play something to protect the Boom Crew rookie here as well, just to help push the 2 damage on that. Like, if you have a Mystic Shot, I think it's fine to protect this unit. Static Shock's even better. See, and like, here it comes up big that we had, like, this is actually game changing, right? That we only had 1 health on the Elise because we blocked the Disciple with it instead of the Boom Crew rookie. There's no punish for not open attacking. I mean, like, I think, like, obviously open attacking is fine. Your opponent has more units than you, so like, if you develop a unit and they don't, it doesn't actually make that much of a difference. I was just trying to think if there's actually anything at slow speed that comes out, or like another unit that makes that you like super threatened. I also don't know why we're blocking with our 2/1 instead of our 1/1. Anything that is going to save this, like anything that deals 1 damage kills this, or one of these. Anything that, like a transfusion onto it, gives it +2 health anyway. So I guess we're just trying to push it down to 1 health if a transfusion comes onto it. But if we had blocked with one of these, we push, like, transfusion pushes it to 2 health, and then we still have our Sapling Maker to push the 2 damage back onto it. I think Mihomme Michel has been blocking extremely inefficiently this game. That was weird. That wasn't me, by the way. And like, if we do see Mihomme lose this game, like, it's not unreasonable to think that part of it was the block choices, like throwing away your Sapling Maker onto the Boom Crew for no reason, pushing an extra damage onto your own Elise by blocking the Crimson unit instead of the Boom Crew rookie. I think this makes a lot of sense. This is actually like very threatening in terms of damage, because this is what, like 11 damage getting pushed through. You know your opponent doesn't want to block with this, and the fact that no burn has come out of Ghosterdriver just yet is a little concerning for them. But you do have to, like, what's the word? Like, find a balance between your life preservation and your aggression, because if you just sit here and try and survive, like, your opponent draws a card every turn. If they just top deck burn spell after burn spell, if you weren't proactively winning the game while trying to stabilize, then you're really not doing it right. So I do like the Brood Awakening over something like the Elise. Yeah, we even see like Ghosterdriver considering throwing out the used Cask Salesman in front of a 2/1 Spider, like just to preserve his own life total. Because we are at a point where like Ghosterdriver has to be cognizant of the Endure combo. And now that some of your board space is cleared up, I think you like snap fire off this Vile Feast onto this Legion Saboteur. It also wouldn't have been unreasonable to play Elise, but I think you can do that next turn. Because playing Elise there gives you a like effective blocker onto the Boom Crew rookie, but because it gets the value on attack, that really doesn't mean that much. But yeah, it is a little weird that we've seen Mihomme just sit at this 10 life for so long. I guess Ghosterdriver just has a lot of units instead of burn, which is pretty unfortunate. But that does mean that like he should consistently be top decking burn at this point. And this is what I was talking about. Like, you are not immune. Just because you are a fast deck does not mean you are immune to the Endure Atrocity combo. Putting Mihomme at 7 though is like, if you have Decimate, it's reasonable that if Ghosterdriver had burn, he's been playing pretty on curve so far. If he had a Decimate, I would like to think he would have played it last turn when he had, I believe he was left with 3 mana, or maybe he tapped out, but I was pretty sure he was left with 3 mana and 3 spell mana. If that was the case, I would have liked to see Decimate out there. Just to like play mana efficiently. Of course, at this point, you are dead to something like a Decimate Get Excited. But without Decimate, it's a pretty tall order for Ghosterdriver to win the game. Like Noxian Fervor, Legion Grenadier is fine as well. If you have something like a Legion Demolitionist, is that what her name is? I think so. Or Imperial Demolitionist, that's the one. Like, there are other cards you could have. Decimate isn't necessary. It makes it a fuck ton easier. So this is where the decision making comes in, right? If you play Endure here, you are opening yourself up to all the burn in the world. It takes you off of Glimpse Beyond, which could draw you into a burn spell. So like, you're kind of just playing to your outs at that point. Whereas Endure gives you a very proactive line to win the game. And next turn, you'll only be on 11 mana. So you can't, even if you bank all your spell mana, right? You'll only go up to 11, which is not enough to play Endure and then play Atrocity. But you also just win the game next turn by playing Endure. So Endure plays around your opponent top decking enough burn to kill you. Glimpse Beyond here plays around slow speed burn killing you. As long as you top deck something that gains you life. But we've already seen a Withering Wail and a Vile Feast out of Mihomme. So there's not, not every single life gain card is left in your deck. Yeah, 3 Grasp, 2 Wail, 2 Vile Feast. It's definitely reasonable for you to whiff. Yeah, seeing the Noxian Fervor fired off here is like terrifying. Like I said, if there's a Decimate, you just lose. I would have to imagine that if Ghosterdriver had game, they would have gone for it there. Okay, so I think... So the problem was he had 5 damage in hand, but he needed a card to discard for the Get Excited. So I understand why he waited until the next turn. It's just kind of an unfortunate draw. Like, if either of those had just been Decimate, like, you just win the game instead, but that's what I was talking about with the Atrocity combo. So it was the Scouts banned out by Ghosterdriver. I didn't think you really had that bad of a scout matchup out of your burn deck or your sea monster deck. I could be wrong though. Like, I'm not super well versed in matchups, but I think like on paper, I'm not that afraid of scouts. I would say that so far, Mihomme is favored. Crimson Disciple is just like a pretty good unit in a lot of matchups, especially the Burn Mirror. You can get a lot of value out of it here. Just because like it pushes damage by blocking 1-drops, and you do have to like, yeah, this is what I was talking about. Where, like, you have to continue to mitigate your aggression versus your life preservation, and Crimson Disciple kind of helps you walk that line extremely effectively. Oh, this sucks. So like you could Mystic Shot this to prevent the damage. That taps you out though, which means that you don't have a good block onto this Imperial Demolitionist. If you Mystic Shot, you take 2 damage. If you don't Mystic Shot, you take 5 damage, or 4 damage rather, because you're gonna block this. Like, this is happening, right? Or sorry, actually no, you would only take 2 damage because you throw down your Crimson Disciple then, and then you block this, and your opponent takes 2 damage. So you'd actually both take 2 damage would be the end result of the turn. I don't think we're gonna see a block here. Yeah. I feel like it's just awkward not to develop the Crimson Disciple there because you do have the 2 1-drops. Picking up Transfusion makes it a lot better that you didn't do anything with this, though, so, you know, what can you really say? I think depending on what comes out here, I actually prefer the Precious Pet. This is a card that doesn't always get value. Okay, now I like Legion Saboteur more. Actually, no, I think I like Precious Pet more, right? Yeah, I actually really like the Precious Pet. Because this is currently the only good blocker for this. No 1-drop that they play is going to be able to block the Precious Pet or kill it. So, like, it feels like you're forcing your opponent to block. Like, because this is the only blocker for Precious Pet, they feel compelled to do this. I still think this is going to block onto the Disciple. I think it'd be kind of buck wild not to. Ooh, I actually really like only attacking with these. I like this a lot. Because it forces the Grenadier to block. Because otherwise you're just like sitting here. You're falling behind on board. You're falling behind in life. Now like you're still behind on board. You're still behind on life, but not as much. Yeah, like Legion Rearguard just kind of sucks in this matchup. It just gets blocked out by every 1-drop. The inability to block kind of sucks. Only pushing 1 more damage. And like it doesn't even push 1 more damage than things like Legion or Legion Rearguard. So no, this is Legion Rearguard. This is Legion Saboteur. So there's a couple of reasons Ghosterdriver could be passing here. One, they just have a handful of burn. They don't have any more units to play, and they think that I would rather not attack and let you get some good trades and then refill your board. Like, I'd rather give you the opportunity to pass back. Or they think that Mihomme has to develop something here. Personally, I think Mihomme currently has the stronger board because they have the Crimson Disciple down, as well as the Transfusion in hand. I'd actually like to see a pass back from Mihomme. The Cask Salesman feels really weird to me. Especially like because I have such an expensive spell in my hand in Static Shock. Maybe, I mean, it's very reasonable for Mihomme to just make the read that like Ghosterdriver passed because they have more burn in hand. And I don't want to give them the opportunity to bank spell mana without me developing a board. But I think like with an expensive spell like Static Shock in hand, I would have actually, like personally, I think I would have passed back. It might not have worked out for me. I don't really play a lot of burn, so that's something I can accept. It's really weird to like talk on these decks where I am inexperienced in the matchups, and because Legends of Runeterra is such a unique game, right? Like it's very hard to like speak to a matchup if you haven't at least run it a few times. So, like, you could Transfusion your Cask Salesman into this Disciple. It's a little bit risky because of Static Shock, but I do think your opponent is going to Static Shock. Okay, now you definitely go for this, right? Yeah, you definitely Transfusion this onto this. Oh. Oh, yeah, no, that makes more sense. Is that lethal? 7, 8. I mean, it is lethal if all of these connect. Okay, yeah, like that's such a good trade for you. Like you already pushed the 2 damage from the Disciple. This is what I'm talking about. Like I'm just fucking missing shit like that. Like that should have been obvious to me, right? Is what it is. But yeah, I really like that out of Michel, because that was lethal if it pushed through, and like now just getting Get Excited out of your opponent's hand is like really valuable for you. This is softened up for the Static Shock. You even could just like eat this damage. Like if your opponent open attacks, I think it's pretty reasonable for you to just take this damage and throw the Static Shock here in its face. It just sets you up for a much better lethal on the following turn, because you just attack with the Precious Pet, you can Noxian Fervor it. Noxian, like, open Noxian Fervoring something, or like unprompted, proactive, that's the word I'm looking for. Proactively Noxian Fervoring something is like terrifying. There's a lot of potential for it to get shut down, but any burn going at your units isn't going at your face, and that feels good. Plus, Ghosterdriver is very much in a position where like they're going to feel compelled to use a removal spell on this Precious Pet first. Mihomme Michel's life total is just like a little bit too high for you to actually start throwing burn at face. But you're also so low on cards that you can't afford to be throwing burn anywhere but face. Is that going at the... Yeah, that's going at the Precious Pet. I think then you just... this is where you would Noxian Fervor your opponent's face with your Precious Pet. You don't have to, though. You are currently... Like, you're drawing a card. You're currently set up to win off a Decimate top deck at any point because you have the Mystic Shot. There's no life gain in this matchup. It's possible that... Like, I definitely think Noxian Fervor's here. I think Mihomme is just struggling on whether or not you throw it onto Legion Rearguard, make your life basically unburnable, or if you do throw it at your opponent's face and sort of lessen the amount of things that you need to top deck. Because pushing through 1 damage is pretty easy. This sets you up for a lot more lethal attempts. Things like Legion Saboteur, Boom Crew Rookie, another Mystic Shot, Get Excited. Anything like that comes out and you're golden. Leaving your opponent with a unit is a little scary, but it's a unit that can't block, and it's one that you can take out with your Mystic Shot if you really want to. And now with all the Noxian Fervors out, yeah, I think we see the Mystic Shot onto the... Right? Yeah, you want to push the damage at face, so like holding back Mystic Shot pushes 1 less damage at face. So you might as well throw this out. Noxian Fervor's cool, now you just need a unit. Preferably one that doesn't die to any, like a Boom Crew Rookie here just ends the game. Legion Grenadier. It's gonna, so like either your opponent plays a blocker or they don't, and if they do, then yeah, you just Noxian Fervor face and feel good about that. There's no reason not to throw it out here.